What is up, IDP Army? What is up, fantasy football fanatics? It's your man, Jordan Rains at 50 Shades of Drunk. I am thankful to have you here joining me if you are on the YouTube channel. I'm also thankful if you're listening to the podcast feed because I have an awesome guest for us today. Someone to talk over some Dynasty draft strategy, some players we are targeting and avoiding right now at this time of the year in our drafts. Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause, Hutchinson Brown. How you doing, brother?
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Yeah, super excited to talk some Dynasty, man. This is going to be good.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, elephant in the room. My Chiefs did, we did beat the Birds. You don't hold that against me, right?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Good. Okay. We can still be friends. That's what I love about fandom. You know what I mean? The competition can also build camaraderie. Am I right or am I right?
Absolutely, man. It really can.
Excellent. All right. Well, tell us what you've been up to, Hutch. This is your first time on the channel, I think. I've known Hutchinson for a couple of years. He's been doing fantasy content for at least 2 years, but you've probably been doing it 3 or 4, I bet, because I didn't discover.
No, it's only been 2. It's only been 2 years. Yeah, my second year on Twitter was like in February. It was like early February, like the anniversary popped up on my phone. So I haven't been in it for that long, but a couple of years, yeah.
Nice,
I got into it right before I was 14 and 16 now. So
that's what's up. Yeah, I met you and your dad at the expo
at the Fantasy Expo.
Have you beat him? I mean, you beat him in fantasy. I think we talked about that there, right? You beat him a few times.
Yeah, me and my dad, he's gotten into it a lot. He's gotten into fantasy football a lot since I've gotten into it. He's gotten more involved, and he's always he's always talks about news with me. Like he says, like, did you see the news about like this player? I'm like, yeah, it was awesome. We'll just talk. And he's like, he's getting into it. It's really cool because like usually it's like a father getting a son into football and all that. But it's like I got into football for my grandfather, and now I'm getting him into football. Like he wasn't into it at all, and I've kind of gotten him into it. And he's super involved. And it's really cool. But
yeah, football really family. That was one of their big logos a couple of years ago too. So that is awesome. I was glad to get to meet you guys. I'm glad you've been sticking it out. The fantasy industry is not always kind, but it is
not always.
But it's fun, and it's a place to learn. You can learn a lot by observing people, from all walks of life loving this game, football that we all get to watch. And we live in a time when we're allowed to create things around it that, allow us to put out our opinions and grow and, just become more useful people to, the overall fantasy community, I guess. Instead of just players, now it's like, all right, check this out. Speaking of which, I was going to wait to ask you some Eagles-related questions first, but I want to ask you them first now because I did have them written down first. Rashad Penny, do you have a strong take? Because you're an Eagles fan, you guys, I know Miles Sanders, finally, I guess he's gone now. Kind of a weird career for him there. They brought back Boston Scott. What are your thoughts on the Rashad Penny signing as a true Eagles fan?
I think it's a really interesting sign. We got him for cheap. I mean, we got him for really, really cheap. So we're not wasted. Like because obviously Rashad Penny, the biggest problem in his career has been injuries, right? When you look at his career, his biggest problem has been injuries. When he's on the field healthy, he's showing out some real talent, especially towards the end of not this past season, but the year before. Like right before the Seattle Seahawks drafted Ken Walker in the draft. Rashad Penny looked fantastic. I mean, he looked absolutely spectacular. And if that Rashad Penny can come out in Philly and he can stay relatively healthy, the Eagles are going to get a steal here. And this is going to be huge. But if it doesn't work out, I feel like it's okay because the Eagles did not invest tons in him. They only invested a 1-year deal, very cheap contract. It's not much in him. So I do like this signing a lot. I am very concerned for the Eagles backfield though, because outside of him and, it's a very, very shaky backfield right now. You have Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott, you have Rashad Penny. If these, none of these guys are true, alphas in an offense. And if you lose one of them, it's going to be really tough to make a lot of production. Thankfully, Jalen Hurts will make up for it a lot in the run game because he's an excellent runner. But I am concerned about this backfield a little bit. It seems a little bit shaky with 3 iffy guys. So I'm a little bit concerned about this backfield right now. But I do love the Rashad Penny signing. I think it's good.
Yeah, and like you said, we've seen the Rashad Penny ceiling games. They are awesome, and like you said, down the stretch 2 years ago when Carson was a little banged up and DJ Dallas really wasn't getting it done. They brought him out, and even with his injury issues, they were putting him out there 60-70% of the snaps, and he was going places. He was scooting. I threw him on a few dynasty teams after that injury because it's, the dynasty market we're so fickle. A guy is this high, and then he tweaks his hamstring or whatever, and then we just don't want him anymore. But then, a year later, he's better. So,
especially at the running back position.
Especially with the running back position.
It's so fluid in the NFL with the running back position because running back career arcs are just not very long. Your prime for a running back is like 2 or 3 years. Like that's what it is. Especially if you're like a workhorse back, like a guy who's getting a lot of touches, your career arc is just not going to last that long. So yeah, the running back position is just, especially in Dynasty, when you look at the rankings, like it's a different RB1 overall every year.
The funniest
really is like 2 years ago was JT. Like everyone was talking about JT.
Oh yeah,
RB1 before this past year, and it's like no. I mean, honestly, right now I'd rather have the 101 in a 2023 Dynasty draft, aka Bijan Robinson, than any running back in Dynasty. I'd rather have that 101 more than any other running back, and I think Breece Hall's a close second for me, but I still rather have that 101. I think next year we'll probably be still looking at Bijan as that answer, depending on his rookie year. But if another guy comes out and just absolutely dominates, like if Breece Hall has a completely ridiculous season for the Jets and this Jets offense is looking great, he could be up there for RB1. Like the RB1, like RB1 overall, and just the RB position in general in Dynasty is just so fluid. It changes all the time.
Yeah, so, and it does because of us. We're human.
Yeah.
Like we can only react to what we see and feel. It's like, oh, that guy looks so good. Like maybe he's a little bit. And I just saw him play, and I saw the other guy play a little while ago, so that definitely plays into it. Before we move on, I will say the coolest part, in my opinion, about Rashad Penny is he's one of the very few players that in this free agency where he landed on a team, the Eagles, where if he actually hits his ceiling, his true ceiling, he could be RB1. You know what I mean? Like, we've seen him be that explosive. The Eagles are dominant in the run game. They were a little sparse, the way they used Miles Sanders last year, but they had a great run game. So he's in a perfect system to really, really, at age 27, a little older, dynasty value might not be there long-term, but this year he could put some people over the top. So shout out to your Eagles for that. Looks like all right, I'm gonna go ahead and try to pull up our notes here just a little bit because I did want to also
I do have one more point on Rashad Penny as well that I want to throw it. You did say RB1 overall in fantasy, and while I do think that's a very interesting idea, and I think that could like work out, but the thing is the Eagles offense, I don't think they're set up to do that with a running back because Jalen Hurts takes tons of goal line carries, which steals a lot of touchdowns. He takes a lot of carries in general, and he also doesn't dump off to the running back position. So also Rashad Penny just isn't a specialty pass catching running back. I mean, we've seen over his career so far, he's just not that guy. Like that's just not Rashad Penny. And in fantasy, like when you look at fantasy running backs, the last 5 years, right, of top 10 running backs, over 70% of them have caught or received at least 50 targets. Like the guys that are finishing at the top of fantasy are the ones that are getting receptions because those are the ones that are just most important to their team. So Rashad Penny finishing RB1 overall, he was RB1 overall in those last 5-6 games, but that's because he was efficient beyond belief. I mean, he averaged 8 yards per carry in 3 of his last 5 games. Like that's just not.
He was like Derrick Henry. It was just he just hit the whole field every time he touched the ball.
Seriously, that's really what it was, and that's just not sustainable. He also scored a touchdown not in each one of the last 6 games, but his pace would have done that. He scored 2 touchdowns in multiple games, but he was just on a tear that just wasn't sustainable. And the Eagles offense, he could be really good for fantasy, but the production we saw at the end of that year for Penny just not sustainable. So RB1 overall I think is a bit high, but maybe fringe RB1. The running back position is just so shallow now. So maybe he could sneak in.
I'm known to get carried away with the hype. So thanks for the splash of cold water there on my Rashad Penny.
Sorry.
I say that because I have him on a few dynasty rosters, so maybe some of my
I have them on
guys I play with are listening and maybe they're getting excited too. Maybe I'm gonna sell them. Who knows? Who knows what's going on? You got to play the Inception game in Dynasty. All right, let's go ahead and talk quickly. We want to talk about these free agency signings, and I wanted to kind of get your take on a couple of these offensive ones. Jimmy G to the Raiders, good quarterback. We've seen him do enough. Gets back with McDaniels there. And then they get rid of Darren Waller. And I saw right before we came on, they signed OJ Howard. We don't even need to speak about OJ Howard. In my opinion, he's not worth even the time I've spent saying these words about him. Unfortunately for fantasy. But what are your thoughts about the Raiders shift as far as, I mean, you put a new quarterback in, it kind of changes everything. Then you take somebody out like Waller, who's been pivotal. What are your thoughts on that? And then any other free agency signings you want to hit on before we talk about our targets for our dynasty drafts that we've been doing?
So Jimmy Garoppolo with the Raiders is really interesting. I don't think when you look at Derek Carr and Jimmy Garoppolo, like obviously, like I think I would say Derek Carr is the better quarterback, but I don't think it's like by that wide of a margin. The thing specifically I want to hit on is the deep ball. Derek Carr over his career has proven that he's an excellent deep ball thrower. Jimmy Garoppolo not as much. So I do think that affects that part of that offense. But I still think Devontae Adams is locked in as a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. Still, I mean, you gotta trust him until he shows us that we can't trust him. Like that's how you play it with Devontae Adams. That's how you play it with these stars that are veterans. You trust them until they can't show it. So Devontae Adams I still trust as a wide receiver 1. Jimmy G, I'm not going to be in on for fantasy. I feel like with Jimmy G now in there and Josh Jacobs in the backfield, especially since Josh Jacobs is on a franchise tag. When you put a running back on a franchise tag, and because if the Raiders wanted to really extend him this year, they would have done it, but they didn't. So I think this year is going to be a year where they run Josh Jacobs in the ground, and it's going to be it's brutal to say because I hate it for Josh Jacobs as a player because he might hurt himself, he might not get the money he wants next year, but I feel like that's how the Raiders are going to play this, and unfortunately that's going to hurt him. But Josh Jacobs is going to be great for fantasy. Devontae Adams is going to be great for fantasy. Outside of that, though, I don't want any other options on this team. I don't want the backup tight end. I don't want Jacoby Myers or Hunter Renfrow, who were both irrelevant last year. I just don't want those guys. But looking at the rest of free agency signings, I mean, Allen Lazard signs with the New York Jets. I mean, very solid wide receiver too, because Elijah Moore is just done with the Jets. I still think Elijah Moore is an extremely talented wide receiver. If he was in the right offense and in the right situation, I truly think he could blow up and have a great year. I really do believe that. Elijah Moore, I mean, I have a Ole Miss Elijah Moore signed jersey behind me here, right here in my studio, that right up there. But nice. I love Elijah Moore, but he is not somebody like this. Him and the Jets, like their relationship is clearly done, and I think his fantasy relevant career with the Jets is done. But Allen Lazard there could be a solid wide receiver too. It depends on who the quarterback is, obviously, if he can be fantasy relevant or not. And then the big one, Jim Montgomery to the Lions on a 3-year deal. I liked how the Lions were able to do this, a 3-year, $18 million contract for Montgomery. I think that's a pretty solid deal for them. I think Montgomery's a pretty talented running back, and I feel like that's a very solid deal there for them. But I mean, Montgomery, I think Montgomery's actually be pretty good for fantasy because I really think DeAndre Swift is toast. I think DeAndre Swift is absolutely toast, and for the Lions at least, I still think DeAndre Swift is a very talented player, and I think in the right offense he could do well. Because DeAndre Swift is not a guy that's going to take 20-plus carries a game. He's not that type of running back. He's a running back you give 10 to 15 carries, you give a bunch of receptions. That's how he works. That's how DeAndre Swift is built as a player. If he is put in the right offense, he could really succeed. So I'm looking to buy him in Dynasty for cheap because some people are crazy panicking and still like just going absolutely insane. Like I've thrown out offers like mid to late seconds for him, and those have been highly debated between people. Like I've thrown out some offers mid to late seconds. Those have been debated. Those have been talked about.
Did you pull any of those off?
What? I did not yet. I did not pull any of them off. But they were
great. Keep pushing that.
We're close. They were close, man. I'd be willing to pay like a
don't give up any ground.
Yeah. I'd be willing to pay that mid to early second for him if I have to. Because if he's traded or if he's moved up, like if he goes away somehow, or if he's cut, like he could be a really, really good fantasy option somewhere else.
Yeah, the talent, and that's the thing. You brought up a good point. You know, I think the thing people were wanting last year was, you know, we'd seen 2 years and we were really hoping that he would push into that next level. You know what I mean? Level up. The reality is, and like you said, we know what DeAndre Swift is, and he's an awesome player. But like you said, he can't sustain a 25, 30 touches to really, really push up there. He's going to be an efficiency guy. He's not a different player than he ever really has been. It's now people are kind of settling into the idea that that's who he is. I am like you. This is the first time I've been looking for him. I think that the upside still exists. But like you said, it needs to be in the right system, the right team. the right circumstances, if they don't have any other options but to run him out there as the only healthy back, and I say whatever team he ends up on, even if he stays with the Lions, what happens if David Montgomery hurts his heel, or, guys, things happen, you know what I mean? So DeAndre Swift, because he's still the same player we've known he is. I think people are realizing the injuries have kind of held him back. But to me, that's the thing. Like, he's still been fantasy relevant with all of these things going against him. So now that the market is kind of pushing back on him, I'm like you. I think the smart play is to now look at DeAndre Swift as a player to add to my teams, because the sentiment's a little lower, and you're not having to acquire him at a super high cost. You're throwing out a second, and that will probably get done if you were patient with it, But this time last year, it would have been a guaranteed first at least. You know what I mean? So, You waited it out, and guess what? He's still only like 24 years old, 23, 24.
He's 24 right now, yeah.
You're looking at, even if he just is a flex player on your dynasty team, he could be that for 5 years. I mean, that's not bad for a second round pick. And if he does actually go up, you can again flip him back. You can cycle him out in a year or two for another second. And that's my favorite thing to do, is to try to get players onto my team for a certain price and then kind of flip out of them for the same price while adding all of those points that they scored those seasons to my team. That's kind of how I look at adding value, or whatever. But yeah, I mean, the running back position, like we said, though, it's the make or break position. You got to pay attention. You got to get in early, or you're going to be paying out the wazoo to get these guys. And when they're on the downhill slope, you just got to be brave, bite the bullet, and say, I still believe, just a little, but I still believe. So, yeah, okay, let's go ahead and jump into the targets, okay? So for this, I wanted to kind of pull up our draft board over here, just so we could pull these guys up. So I wanted to get your thoughts on players you're targeting in drafts. So we're just going to start with the quarterback position. Give me one player you're targeting in startup drafts, or in your startup drafts, and give me one player that you are fading in startup drafts at the quarterback position.
Yeah, this is tough. At the quarterback position, I think that there's a lot of stench on a certain quarterback right now, and he's jumping into his second season. There's a lot of stench on him, and I feel like I look there when you look at the metrics, when you look at the stats, some of the advanced numbers, there is reasons to be concerned. But I feel like at his price, it's worth it. I like taking dart throws on Kenny Pickett, quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I do like taking dart throws on him. I wasn't the biggest fan of him coming out. I really wasn't, at all. But he progressed a lot towards the end of the season. When you look at the numbers, he progressed a lot. He was very, very good with not turning over the ball, made some very clutch throws, and he made some highlight plays through the season that were like, ooh, wow, not many quarterbacks in the NFL can make that throw. There were some plays this year where he really showed out. He's Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, he's Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth. He's got a very solid core around him right now. And Kenny Pickett is just set up for success here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And he's locked in as a starter for this year. He's locked in. There's the Steelers, and they're probably not going to be good enough to the point where they're going to be drafting a quarterback in 2024. I mean, not bad enough, sorry. Their defense is pretty good, and their offense, even if Kenny Pickett doesn't have the best year, their offensive talent's going to carry them. So Kenny Pickett's probably going to be a starter for at least 2 years, if not more. And when you look at the 2024 free agency class as well for quarterbacks, it's Kirk Cousins and then nobody. It's not nobody out there. There's going to be nobody out there in 2024 at the quarterback position for free agency. So Kenny Pickett's job, I think, is safe for at least the next 2 years. And if he really, at his price, if he really steps up and comes through, that is going to pay off. So
yeah, like you said, he's in a good spot. He has the coaches. He's got the,
Mike Tomlin head coach. Come on, he's got the coach.
To give him some short fields. He rushed a little bit more last year than I had originally realized. He
can run too. I think
15, 10, but then you get 20, 30, 50. I mean, those are multiple first downs. So that's something that not everybody can do. So I love this pick. I'm a Steelers fan too. That's my other team besides the Chiefs and the Bills, and then everybody's gonna attack me in the comments. Oh, you got 3 teams. Yeah, I love a lot of teams. But I love my Steelers, and Kenny Pickett is somebody that I'm personally, I'm not super into him, but I love hearing other people be in him, because the argument is there. He didn't come out and light the world on fire. We've gotten kind of spoiled with some of these players coming out and lighting the world on fire. but he did do enough to merit the Steelers sticking with him. So I think that you made a really good point there. So that's somebody you are targeting.
Yes, I'm looking to get him in drafts.
All right, now who is a quarterback that you are fading right now in drafts?
Fading is I'm gonna be talking about a player who I think a lot of people actually see as a bit of a buy right now. There's some people who think this player is a buy and he's a higher up priced quarterback. I just don't see it because this year is going to be awful. I'd be more looking to buy in the middle of this season or next offseason. I'm talking about Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray, quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals. This dude is set. Like, the Cardinals are going to be horrific in 2023. I don't know. Like, their roster is looking pretty slim. The receiving core around Kyler Murray after DeAndre Hopkins gets traded. I mean, outside of Marquise Brown, it's looking a bit rough. Like, it is not a good sight. The Cardinals are going to be a bad team in 2023. They're going to be a bad team. And don't we forget that Kyler Murray tore his ACL? Like, he's not going to be ready for the start of the season at all. He might not start week 1. And if he does, he's not healthy. Like, the timeline does not match up. He's not going to be the same Kyler Murray that runs for 50 to 100 yards. Like, he's not going to be that guy when he comes back. He's going to suck for fantasy. I'm completely fading him in 2023 for redraft purposes, like not at all looking his way. But in Dynasty, I don't think he's worth buying right now. I mean, maybe if you're a complete rebuild team, but I just think you're going to be able to get more. I think you're going to be able to buy him for cheaper in the middle of next year when he sucks. So I am looking to completely fade Kyler right now. I think his price is only going to dip from here, and I don't think that's worth buying in Dynasty. You don't want to buy a player where their value is only going to dip from here. It's just not, it doesn't make any sense. So Kyler Murray is somebody that I just don't want at all.
You're so smart. You know, I say that because it's obviously confirms my priors. I also agree. I think Kyler Murray has, again, after a while, a player shows you who he is. And we've seen Kyler Murray play in the NFL, and everybody wants to give him all these caveats for why he hasn't made it. Everybody wants to blame Cliff. Cliff drafted the guy. I mean, Cliff put the best quarterback he thought into his system, and it didn't work out. That tells me that there's something wrong. I mean, you can't just blame him. Like, this quarterback couldn't pull it off. We've seen Kyler he's mediocre. I mean, at real life football, in my opinion. He rushes around and scrambles sometimes, but aside from that, I've never really seen much special come from him. And like you said, his weapons are not going to be great. You know, they've got him a new weapon every year. DeAndre Hopkins, they, brought in AJ Green. They brought in Marquise Brown. They brought in Zach Ertz, James Conner. They bring in all these things. They're trying to build it up for a situation to be successful around him, and it just never seems to happen. And you have to wonder eventually, what's the missing piece here? And like you said, it's not going to get better. So even now, although his price is kind of dipped in Dynasty in how we view him, I agree with you. I think that you can wait it out even longer, because people are going to get tired of staring at him on his bench. I had Deshaun Watson in one of my main Dynasty leagues. I've been staring at Deshaun Watson for 2 seasons, and it's been a lot of different trade offers come through for him.
Yeah.
And at different times, I was in different places, but I've made it through the darkness. Thank you to Geno Smith. Shout out to Kirk Cousins for getting me through. And his value is up. You know what I mean? Because he, in my opinion, he's the same player. He didn't have a catastrophic injury. He's dealing with issues. But on the field, he's the same thing, in my opinion. Kyler Murray, again, I don't see when he comes back him becoming more valuable. I mean, he can only come up a little bit. So I think that's a good move there. And that's not to say there's not a point when I would, like you, wouldn't go get Kyler Murray. But we're not.
No, yeah. Here's the thing:
we need to bottom out even more.
Yeah, because Kyler Murray, when you look at it, I don't think he's mediocre. I think he's definitely. I think he's sometimes by some people overrated as a passer. I don't think he's one of the premier passers in the NFL. But he's an elite fantasy quarterback because he runs the football at an elite level. Like, it's just not really, when he is on the field and he is fully healthy, he is elite for fantasy. And there's not really, there's not much debate around that because he runs.
No, you're 100% right. But the thing for me there, and why I still think it is important to consider if he's good for football or not, is after a while you end up in a Carson Wentz type situation or a Jameis Winston situation where people stop caring about your draft capital and people stop caring about, the stuff that doesn't matter. Eventually it comes down to, are you helping this team win football games or not? And after a while, everybody else is gone, but you're the same guy. You're the only guy that's still here for the last 5 years. So that's my worry with Kyler. And again, I've said this for a while. I agree with you. He's amazing for fantasy. But how long are we going to get him as a starting quarterback in fantasy? 2 more years? I mean, seriously. I mean, because eventually when you don't win, you stop getting chances, and your chances get worse. Do we want him to be the next Colts, backup dude, or Commanders? You know what I mean? Like, he's just going to follow that Carson Wentz path, I'm afraid. So from a value standpoint, again, it's just really hard to see it going north again, unless like a perfect situation kind of happens. But I love that you brought him up. I don't want us to get too bogged down here, because people who watch this channel know I've been dogging Kyler Murray for like 2 years for fantasy, just because, I mean, it's just, one, it's not fun to really watch him play because he's always losing, and 2, he just, I don't know, whatever. We'll move on. Let's do the running back position. Running back position. So who's a guy you're targeting right now in drafts, and then who's a guy you're fading at the running back spot for dynasty purposes, and then kind of give us a why. We'll go with your target first.
So running back, is it okay if I shout out a rookie?
Yeah, go for it.
Is that cool? All right, I think this guy, I mean, he's drafted the first round in dynasty drafts. I mean, in rookie drafts. And he's drafted usually the 3rd, 4th round in startups. I think that there's a lot of hype around one specific running back, Bijan Robinson. And I think that hype for Bijan, well-deserved. Bijan is a difference maker. But I think that shadow is just leaving Jahmyr Gibbs in the dust. And I think it's unfair. Jahmyr Gibbs could be the RB1 of a lot of classes lately. Jahmyr Gibbs is a special running back talent. I don't know if he's going to show up on there, because I don't know if a rookie show up in there. But Jahmyr Gibbs, I think he's a very, very special player. When you watch him play, he is very smooth as a pass catcher. It is so natural for him. He can run routes at an elite level when you're talking about running back position. And he's also, like, at 200 pounds, he's extremely fast. Extremely fast for his size. I mean, I believe he ran like a 4.46, 4.44, 40 at the combine.
He was
at 200 pounds.
Yeah, it was like a 4. Yeah, it was a really low 4.
At 200 pounds? That's extremely impressive. Extremely impressive for that size. Like, he's so quick on his feet. He's a weapon with the ball in his hands. And fantasy running backs, when you look at now, I was talking about earlier with, fantasy running backs getting tons of targets, and that's what we want. Jahmyr Gibbs is the future of fantasy football running backs. It's what we want out of a running back in fantasy football. You don't necessarily need 20 carries a game. If you get 10 to 15 carries, but you're getting a boatload of targets, it's worth it. So if you put him in an offense right now, like the Chargers, and replace Austin Eckler, if you do something like that with Jahmyr Gibbs, this dude's going to be a difference maker in fantasy football, and he's going to be a game changer. And I don't want to say it, but like, we could be looking at him like in the same tier as like Bijan Robinson for fantasy eventually. I think that could absolutely happen after a rookie year. I think if the right landing spot for Jahmyr Gibbs, I think we can look at him the same tier as Bijan, maybe even over.
Nice.
I know that's kind of crazy. I know it's kind of crazy, but if you put him on the Chargers, there's nothing he can't do. I truly believe that. Jahmyr Gibbs I'm all in on Jahmyr Gibbs. And he's my locked in 104, and he's competing for 103 in a super flex league.
Love that pick. There you go. There's a early target for you all for a running back. And the nice thing about him, like you said, is he's probably going to slip through the cracks. There's going to be the guys we know and love. Bijan, I'm
really hoping to see a first round pick on him. I'm really hoping to see a first round pick. That'd be just a cherry on top for me. But he's locked in second round.
You almost want to hope for a lower pick so people keep fading him, and then you put him on your team. That's what you really want. All right, so who's a fade for you at the running back position coming into this next year? When you're in your drafts, who's somebody that you're like, I'm not taking that guy. It's cost too much, too many red flags. Who are you looking at right now where you're like, count me out?
It's interesting because this player that I'm talking about is a very similar style of player to Jahmyr Gibbs. He's a specialty pass-catching running back. You might think that's great. But right now, he's not in the offense that does that. And I'm talking about James Cook, running back of the Buffalo Bills. This guy, he is a talented player. I really do believe he's a talented player. I think in the right offense, like let's say the 49ers were to not trade for Christian McCaffrey, James Cook could smash it in San Francisco. He could absolutely crush it in San Francisco. I think he'd do a great job there being that dump-off guy, pass catching specialist running back. Like that'd be amazing for him. But in Buffalo, it's just so, like, when you look at the Buffalo offense, you might think great for running backs because they score a ton of touchdowns. Josh Allen's a great quarterback. Like, of course, it's going to work out for running backs. It just doesn't. Over the past 3 years, and this is when Josh Allen's been good, the past 3 years, and Josh Allen's been good. Buffalo's been 19th, 24th, and 29th in overall running back fantasy points in each of the last 3 years. That's what they've been. And it's only gotten worse. And specifically because Josh Allen is horrible for fantasy running backs. He doesn't throw to the running back position. He doesn't he takes goal line work. He takes carries himself. It just doesn't work. And James Cook as a specialty pass catcher just doesn't fit in this offense at all. It's not a perfect fit for him. And I am so out on James Cook. Maybe if James Cook were to get traded, it could work out, but I don't see that happening, really. I really don't see that happening. I don't know why. I just have a feeling I don't see.
Yeah, he's only been on the team in 1 year, so they've
been on for 1
year. Keep him around.
Yeah,
I agree with you though. I mean, I think you're onto it. I mean, they don't. People wanted to turn every time a running back comes into Buffalo around Devin Singletary, the fantasy community makes that player the greatest running back that's ever existed, basically.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's Devin Singletary or bust. You know what I mean? Like, he's not ever going to be, like you said, the things that hold any running back there are holding Devin Singletary back as well. It's not that Devin Singletary is not capable of catching the ball, rushing the ball, doing the goal line work, etc. And James Cook was never really a threat to do that. And I'm with you. I think it's kind of a fool's errand to even at a lower cost to acquire right now, which it's still too high in my opinion. You can take David Montgomery, startup, right before James Cook. Or Tyler Algier. Why would I take James Cook when I have players who have shown me, and teams who have shown me that they're going to use a player a certain type of way, when we've only seen, like you said, from Buffalo, running backs not be everything we want them to be. James Cook isn't going to be the guy that changes that. So I agree with you there. I think I love that pick. That's a great pick. So let's go to the wide receivers next. Who's the wide receiver that you are currently targeting? It can be somebody early, somebody late, whatever. In your dynasty drafts, though, that you really like to build, make a meaningful part of your teams, and then somebody who will get that trash out of here.
Your wide receiver is so plentiful. There's so many interesting names at wide receiver at all times. There's always players you can be targeting, always players you can be fading. There's just a lot of wide receivers. And there's always so many of them. There's always so many that are fantasy relevant. But when I look at the wide receiver position, I really am liking Christian Watson. The more I think about it, the more and more I love Christian Watson. When he was coming out of college, I wasn't the biggest fan coming out of college because I did not like the little production in the small school. Like, when you see that in a prospect, that is a big red flag. Big red flag. When you see little production in a small school like that. That is not something you want to see. But he had an elite speed for his size. It was just absolutely insane. Was he I can't remember his speed, but it was just alien-like. And this year, coming into the year, early in the year, it didn't look so great. Had a couple bad plays. Fortunately, at the end of the year, he really came on. Mostly because of touchdown production, I will admit that. But he at least showed levels of production for fantasy. He at least showed that production is there. And this year, the Packers, they haven't added wide receiver, but they've only given receiving options away. They gave away Robert Tonyan. They didn't re-sign him. They let him go. They let Alan Lazard go. They're just letting guys go. And Christian Watson is setting up to be the clear number one alpha of this offense, sitting at 6'5", 208 pounds, as it says here on Sleeper. He's a monster. He's going to be a monster in the red zone. He's going to be a monster everywhere. And a young, potentially struggling quarterback in Jordan Love is going to be leaning on that big body receiver. So Christian Watson is somebody that I think is set up for tons and tons of targets next year and tons of red zone opportunities. I'm in on Watson.
Love it. Rookie this last year, 1, 2 at 300-yard games there. And that's with missing a handful of games as well. So I love to see that from a rookie. Rodgers leaving doesn't scare the bejesus out of you?
It definitely, no, not really. I think that Aaron Rodgers would definitely be great for Christian Watson. I think they would be able to bond well. And I think they'd be able to have a great fantasy, they would be able to produce well for fantasy with each other. But when you look at Jordan Love as well, I was talking about Jordan Love as potentially young, struggling quarterback. He's going to want to look for that big body number one option, and it's very clear who that is, and it's Christian Watson. So I'm gonna be in on Christian Watson no matter what. And we saw some production from Christian Watson with Jordan Love. We saw that connection there, and it worked out. Christian Watson had some good games with Jordan Love playing, with Jordan Love starting, and Jordan Love actually looked all right. He looks like he can manage an offense well. So I'm excited for Christian Watson this year for fantasy, no matter who it is. I think it'd be better with Rodgers, but I'm assuming Love is a starter. I've assumed that for the last couple months. That
sound reasoning, like you said. If we assume that Jordan Love, is efficient, but he's, it's his first time starting. Obviously, he's probably not going to have total command of these games, against some of these veterans, and they're going to be down, So he's, like you say, he's going to have to rely on Watson, whether he likes it or not. When you have to take a big section of the field, you have to do that. A la Jameis Winston, Mike Evans, kind of like that, where if you got to take the field, we kind of knew that season, like, where's Jameis going to go? Well, he's got to go far, so he's going to Mike. I like your processing there, that it kind of puts Watson as kind of a sneaky guy there. So and even without the legendary Shaman Rodgers there. So good pick there on him. And then who is a wide receiver you're fading? Someone you're like, get out of here.
This one is.
Oh, we got a question in the chat. Let's see what we got here. He says, Paroli says, what do you think Watson is worth in draft pick?
Like a rookie pick. I think there's something. Is it a rookie pick or like a start?
So let's just assume rookie picks.
If we're looking at rookie pick, I think when you're looking at, not Bijan. I'm not giving up the 101.
You have to consider this class too. This class is kind of weak. So
at wide receiver specifically,
would you move into the first? Would you be willing to give a first for Watson?
Oh my God, that's not even a choice for me. Yes, 100%.
Really?
100. It's 100% a first. That's not even a decision for me. It's about, for me, because I think the top three are ruled out. Bijan, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young. Those three are out. And then when it comes to Jahmyr Gibbs, I think I'd rather have Gibbs still. I'm very, very big fan of Gibbs, so I'd rather have him. But then after that, when you're looking at the rest of the picks, it's JSN, Jack Smith-Njigba. I love him. I think he's fantastic. He's going to be a tough one, really, because we haven't seen the draft capital. We haven't seen where he's gone, so that one's going to be tough. And then you have Anthony Richardson, who I'm just not a fan of. I'm really not. I can't get on the Anthony Richardson train. For fantasy, the upside is there, but he was legit an awful passer in college, like a legit a bad passer. Like,
it's just better. I never want him to throw. I want him to just run the whole game.
I know you don't want him to throw. You want him to run the whole game. Like, it's just, I'm not in a super believer in him. I don't think he's gonna be a starter for very long in the NFL. So honestly, like the 106, like that's kind of where I'm at. 105, 106. I'd be willing to trade that for Christian Watson right now. Like I'm in. I've seen trades done for less. I've seen the 109 go for him.
Hey, there you go.
I've seen the 109 go for him. So I would try for less. But if if the other manager's really not going in, I'm okay giving like the 106 for him. I think that's a solid. That's a trade to be willing to make.
That is bullish. Okay, I need to read. What I'm learning in this conversation is I knew Christian Watson was flashing last year, and I kind of saw it. And I don't know, did you watch football when Martavis Bryant was playing?
Yes, essentially. Do you remember? The comment just came and says, so he's worth Gibbs or JSN. I think I would rather have Gibbs than him, but JSN is so much tougher. So that's why I would say the 106, because then that rules out Gibbs and JSN, who would probably go those two picks right there. Because you have Bijan, Stroud, Young, Gibbs, JSN. I think those five I'd still rather have than Christian Watson. So 106, I'd be willing to give up for him. Because the thing is, though, at the 106, there might be an Anthony Richardson crazy fan in your league who's willing to pick him up right there, especially if he gets drafted like top 5 in the draft. So 106, you might be able to get one of those two guys. So I think 106, but overall,
I gotta interrupt you here just because, and I hate to do it, but some of the stuff you're saying right now, I love. No,
go ahead, man. You're good.
You're not just parroting back necessarily the consensus of like what I kind of see in the fantasy world, which I love, because I thought a lot of people seem to be locked into those quarterbacks. And you're very much open to the idea of passing on Anthony Richardson. Some people, whether that be right or wrong, that doesn't really matter, because we're all coaching and creating our own teams. It's not like you're not taking a player at that spot. Yeah. You're just saying, I'd rather have this guy, and that's how I'm playing fantasy. And I love that. Because I think it's so important that people understand that. I mean, like they were saying, more than one way to skin a cat. You know, you don't have to lock in to any particular analyst ideas or any particular.
No, that's a horrible thing to do. You gotta like, I mean, I would love it if you listen to me because that's cool. But you also gotta broaden your mindset when you look at fantasy football. You gotta listen because I listen to content, so I love taking in content. I love listening to all different types of people from around the industry, talking with different people. It's always the thing you gotta do, because if you listen to one person the entire time, especially if there's someone who's a bit stubborn with their strategy and doesn't change things, it's really going to hurt your fantasy football mindset. It's going to put you in a box, and you don't want to.
And you wake up one day and you have a crappy team, and it's because you've been stuck holding on to hope for some of these guys, and you haven't been playing the game. Yeah. And
with this comment, I like this. I would try. I think 111 is a bit of a low ball offer. I don't know if someone. I mean, you could try that in a super flex league. I mean, you could try that. I don't think it'll get taken. I would try like 111 in a late second if you got that, or like 111 in a bench player if you got that, and I would try that, see if that works. But if worse comes to worse, or maybe and slowly upgrade from there from 111, because I would love to have the 106 and Christian Watson, that'd be great. But if worse comes to worse and you cannot make a deal with that 111 and someone else, then I'd be willing to give up 106. That's would be my advice there with Watson in that trade.
All right, you heard it here from the man himself. Now, who's a wide receiver that you are going to fade? We got caught up on Watson there, but
we did a little bit, but it's all right. It's all right. We still got plenty.
Yeah, I mean, heck, we got all off seasons.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So a player I'm kind of fading in Dynasty right now when looking at the wide receiver position, there's definitely a few guys you could look at. I mean, there's definitely a few. I wrote down multiple names here. I'm just reading them off, trying to figure out which one I really, really want to shout out here. And when it comes down to it, I really want to talk about. Wow, this is tough. This is really tough. I'm gonna talk about. I know I talk about Kyler Murray. I also want to talk about Marquise Brown. I don't think it's. I feel it's the same argument about Kyler Murray. I just don't think it's worth it because it's going to be a bad year for the Cardinals. Marquise Brown, especially in the beginning of the year, is gonna have to play with a backup quarterback. And it's just not going to be fun. I would want to buy him in the middle of the season when he's awful for so much cheaper than he's going for right now. And he's cheap right now. He actually is decently cheap right now. But I think there's an opportunity for him to get even cheaper in Dynasty. I'm just out on this Cardinals offense.
I love this pick too. I love this pick too. And you know what? You're right, because what's going to happen when you say this probably, and why people will say this is, it's the targets. You know, he got all the targets. These great targets. It's again, these are caveat. Kyler Murray's throwing this ball, ladies and gentlemen, and it is what it is. After a while, I mean, this was your guy. He had a 140-yard game week 3, and after that, I mean, he really, even with all the targets that he was getting forced, he couldn't get over 80 yards, but one other time the whole season. So it's just, I'm with you. I love that. You know, I've seen buy low, and I've seen people kind of flexing Hollywood, and I've seen people drafting Hollywood higher than I'm like, you're taking Hollywood there? I'm like, I mean, I would take Hollywood, sure, as a wide receiver 3-4 flex. And I'm seeing people take him in a spot where I'm like, you have to roll him out as soon as he's healthy if you're drafting him in a startup there. And I just don't think that's a very good. It's not a very forward-thinking process. So I love that you're on that on that too. Before we go to the last position, I wanted to ask. We've been talking a little bit about. Obviously, we've been talking about fantasy since we kind of got started, but earlier we did say a little bit. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your journey in the industry and all that. So I wanted to slide back over into that. Because even what you're saying to me right now and how you've been, some of your takes and insights, maybe it's my own fault because I just maybe I've made too many assumptions about everybody else's fantasy analysis. But you're throwing out some stuff that I'm just like, I don't see takes like that necessarily. So keep throwing them out there in the public eye for sure. I'm loving it.
I appreciate that a lot. Thank you, actually.
Oh, and one of the things I had written down. Of course, bro. I mean, give credit where credit is due. And I think that something that you have to offer the fantasy community is a unique perspective, because I mean, you said, I was talking before we came on, I said, you're a vet in the game. You're like, oh, it's weird to be called a vet. you've been making content for 2 years consistently.
Yeah.
You got school and all kinds of other stuff, I'm sure, going on. You're living a life.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
that's veteran stuff. And you're paying attention. You're playing the game. You're making the content. I think sometimes that because a lot of the guys that do what we do, you know, are my age or around my age, you know, we see things a certain type of way. And your unique perspective is partially because you're young. You know, you don't have biases, you don't have feelings and thoughts, and haven't seen things a certain type of way the way we have, and that allows you to see things with a fresh perspective, you know, a clean eye or whatever, which is something we try to do on this channel and on this podcast a lot. Like we don't intentionally always, you know, have obtuse takes, but we definitely it's not all rainbows and butterflies. Like you said, not everybody's going to hit that ceiling.
Yeah.
And just because 8 out of 10 people think that doesn't mean you have to make it 9 out of 10. You're allowed to have a different opinion. So I really, really, really love some of the stuff you've been throwing out here. And I just wanted to give you props on that and just say, you know, don't ever let anybody hold the fact that you're young or inexperienced, whatever, against you. I mean, that is a superpower because eventually you won't be. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you'll just be an old dude with a bunch of battle scars and, you know, missing some teeth and all that good stuff. So speaking of some old dudes with battle scars, let's talk about a haggard position, tight ends. Ugh.
Yeah.
Talk to me. What are your thoughts on the tight end position, and who are you targeting and fading? And if you want to respond back to what I just said, go ahead and do that too. I didn't want to just run you over, but...
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. That really means a lot, actually. Like when you said, like, I hear your takes and it's like all like completely different. Like that really means a lot to me, actually. Like it's really, really interesting because like I do like take, you know, intake from other like analysts and like, you know, always study and look at other content, see like maybe there's a new perspective I haven't been looking at, or a new way I haven't been seeing things. And absolutely I've learned from that. But I've also taken that information and changed it to the way the NFL is played now, and the way that I see fantasy football, the way I see football, how I see it played, and just kind of make my own out of this. Like I don't copy and paste rankings into my sheets and like say buy this guy, buy that guy. Like I don't do that. Like I am like legit like I have school, I have work. Like I work like as a cashier, as a retail job. Outside of those two things, fantasy football is my life. Like this is it. I'm up at night, hours researching, like doing everything I can to make my content the best that it can be. And I'm really trying, like, I'm really just trying to be the best that I can be in this industry. Like I want to pursue this as my life. Like I really do. I want to pursue this long term, and I want this to be a part of my life forever. And I'm really trying.
I love it. And I think you're doing it the right way. And I would say, you know, I mean, I know what you say is what you mean, because like you said, you aren't just putting out other people's quote unquote good takes. You're because you care enough and you have a long-term enough vision. You want your takes to be out there. At this point, it's like, if it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. It's mine. And when it is good, you're going to be able to say, I did that. And whenever when you were looking at a time horizon of like, I want to do this forever, you're not just, you know, a small win doesn't mean anything, because you're establishing, you're laying a foundation for something amazing. So, and like I said, and I think that gives you the boldness to have your own thoughts and processes in an industry where a lot of people get a little chirpy if you don't agree with them. You know?
Yeah. One last thought, and then I'll get to the tight ends. I do want to say, like, like on Twitter, like I try to be like, with my takes and with like who I am on Twitter, I try to be my genuine self. Because I've noticed in this industry, the biggest thing I've heard, the biggest thing I see, if you're not your genuine self in this industry, you're not going to make it at all. You're not going to get people grabbing onto you. Because in order to have people that really, really like you and follow you and like really like your content, you're going to have people that dislike you. And I have plenty of people that don't like me. And honestly, I don't care. I got plenty of people who like me and who back me up, and I'm going to focus on those people. And obviously, look, if you got constructive criticism for me, I'll take it. I will take it and I will learn. And I'll bring up a specific take I had heading into I believe it was the 2020 or 2021 NFL draft. I can't remember which class it was. I was a bit low on Jamar Chase. There were a few things I was seeing in his game that I did not love. I thought he was catching the ball with his body a little bit. I didn't love the way that he caught the ball like that. I was just a little bit lower on him than consensus. I thought Devontae Smith was the better player, and I got hated. And it turns out Jamar Chase is definitely the better player. I mean, Devontae Smith is fantastic. I'm glad about that take that I was higher on Devontae Smith, but Yeah, Jamar Chase really hurt me there. But anyway.
You can stand on that, though. It's like, so what? You got it wrong, but you're like, at least it was
I'm not
my
willing
take to get wrong.
I'm not afraid to just go out with my own take because it's contrarian and different from everybody else's. Like, I'm really not. I just want to put myself out there. I want to put myself out on the plate. And if you don't like it, then that's fine. You can find someone else that you like. But if you like it, great. I'm happy to have you. Like, that's really how I feel about this. And
that's how it is, you know. Just again, put yourself out there, and if you have something you can be proud of, and that's what, you know, I'm glad you came on. People are probably like, guys, quit, you know, broing out, give us some fancy content, geez Louise. But let's jump into the tight end position.
Tight end position.
So fickle, you know, 3 years ago, people put George Kittle as the number 1 tight end in Dynasty. You know, now it's Travis Kelce again at 34. You know, is Gronk the greatest tight end? Is Kelce the greatest tight end? I recently found out that apparently Jordan Reed wasn't that athletic. They're just the position is just so odd. You kind of just have to pick your guy if you don't have Kelce and just hope to God that it works out. But who are you targeting? Who's a player that you're trying to attach to your dynasty teams in redraft, but in Dynasty, or even maybe in best ball? We could caveat into that a little bit if you wanted to. But who's a tight end you're targeting, and then who's a tight end you're fading?
So a tight end I'm targeting, I'm really liking, like, when I look at the tight end position, I want athletes. I want guys who can make plays after the catch. Like, that's what I want. Because if you're just going to be a boring old, not athletic, because that's not how the tight end position is played anymore. The tight end position is, you got to be athletic. You got to be an athlete to play the tight end position. And I really like. I do like to shout. Can I shout too? Is that okay?
Yeah,
I'll make a quick shout too. Both are actually like similar sizes, which is funny. But I really like. First one I want to shout out is Jelani Woods. First off, his athletic scores and his athletic abilities are pretty wild when you look at the numbers. Like, I think he was a 94th percentile in speed score, and that's with like size adjusted speed score according to player profile. Like, he is a very athletic tight end, and as a rookie this year, not much production throughout the year, but towards the end, if you want to look towards the end, you'll see some targets going his way. You'll see some catches being made. He made a couple nice plays, and I think that next year we could see an opening in this offense for him, because when you look at the receiving core, it's just Michael Pittman and nobody. And we got a rookie quarterback coming in, which isn't always great.
Just nobody.
Yeah, it's just nobody. There's nobody there. And like, when you look at quarterbacks, because look, we're assuming that they're going to draft a rookie quarterback, right? C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young or Richardson, or one of these 3 guys. And I really hope it's not Richardson. I really hope it's not. But I'm hoping it's Young or Stroud, one of these 2. And if it is, we're going to be looking at Jelani Woods, a very, very interesting fantasy tight end, because rookie quarterbacks, we talk about how they really impact their wide receivers, and then it's not good. Not good. Like, fantasy wide receivers are usually not good with rookie quarterbacks. It just doesn't work out. The tight end position, the tight end is a lot less dependent on the quarterback. And rookie quarterbacks, when you look at rookies, like, if they're struggling, if they're not doing so well, the big body, the safe tight end is what they're going to want to look for. And Jelani Woods, 6'7", 253 pounds. Yeah, he's that guy. Michael Pittman's big, but Jelani Woods is big. He's going to be looking his way. So I think Jelani Woods is going to be a very, very interesting fantasy option. I would like to buy him in Dynasty. I think he's a little undervalued. And another one I want to shout out, he's a rookie. I think Darnell Washington is the best tight end in this class. Best tight end in this class. Right now, he's the best tight end in this class. I know Michael Mayer's up there. Michael Mayer is an old school bully ball tight end. That's how he plays football. He is not a supreme athlete. He's decent, not a supreme athlete. On the other hand, Darnell Washington is a elite athlete. He is a alien. He ran half a tenth of a second. I don't remember what that exactly is, but 0.05 seconds slower than Michael Mayer did. And he's like 2 inches taller and got 20 pounds more on him. Like, dude is freakishly athletic. And some people will say he is not developed as a pass catcher. That is not even remotely close to true. The stats aren't always there because of I can't remember his name, but he's the tight end of Georgia. He's going to come out in the next class. Oh my gosh,
I don't know anything about college football.
I think Bowers, Rob I think it's Brock
Brock
Bowers.
Bowers. That sounds like a name I've heard.
I think that's it. I'm blanking on his name. I apologize, but like he's been dominating for them. But Darnell Washington, on the other hand, has made a lot of great plays, specifically after the catch as well. Like he can run you over, but he can also juke you if you're not careful. Like he can jump over you as well. Like he is just insane. If a team like I love what Spiffy T Football Combat says. They need to figure out how to use him like he's an athletic and Tony Gates. Or is that Jelani Woods?
I think he's talking about Woods.
That might have been Jelani Woods. But I think you can make the same argument for Darnell Washington because they're very similar players when you look at their size, when you look at their speed scores, when you look at everything, they're very similar players. I think Darnell Washington, if you like, because when you look at his size, you might think, oh, big blocker guy. Like the NFL might put him in that role. But if some team drafts him and unlocks him like he should be, the sky is the limit for Darnell Washington, his fantasy value. So I am very in on him. I will pick him over Michael Mayer. I'll pick him over any tight end in this class. And if he gets picked in the first round of the NFL draft, first round of a rookie draft, and he's there at the end of the first round of a rookie draft, I might take that shot.
Yeah, but skewing young on your tight ends that you like. I like that. You know, that's the position it's easy to kind of like get a middling of the pack guy. So why not skew young on some of these players that you want late in these drafts and hope that you hit that home run shot? And Jelani Woods, like you said, athletically, he didn't get a whole mess of targets. He had a couple of games where he had a lot, but he looked, like you said, he caught your eye when he was out there. And I think people are starting to realize that Michael Pittman, like DeAndre Swift, I mean, is who he is. And that leaves a lot of room for Jelani Woods to prove that he is something a little different. So I like both those picks. Give me your tight end fade. Who are you kind of like out on? They don't necessarily have to even be a hot name that people are like gassing up and you're out on. Just be anybody that you're like, I'm not trying to get him on any of my teams. I'm not really feeling that player. Who would that be for you at the tight end position? Yeah,
that's it for me. Is going to be someone who I just don't see. He had a pretty good fantasy season this year, actually. But I think when you look at it, I think his ceiling is just so capped. And when you look at the tight end position, you want to draft guys where you see the upside of them being at least a top 2 pass catcher on their team. If you're getting a guy who's the third option, you're just not going to hit the fantasy ceiling you want unless they're passing like 50 times a game. Unless they're like, because I want to talk about specifically when Tom Brady and the Bucks a couple years ago, I think they broke the record for most pass attempts in a season a couple years ago. Like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin were all great for fantasy. Rob Gronkowski and Antonio Brown, when Antonio Brown was on the field, was great for fantasy. When Gronk was on the field, was great for fantasy because they passed an insane amount. But this team that this player's on doesn't pass an elite number. I'm talking about Dallas Goedert, the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't think he's someone that you really want to target in fantasy football because you have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Like, A.J. Brown signed to like a 4-year contract. Like, he's stuck for the next 3 years. And Devontae Smith on his rookie contract, the Eagles aren't going to be trading him, I don't think. Like, he's stuck with Philly for the next 3 years. So when you look at this 3-year window that Dallas Goedert has, I mean, he's 28 years old, too. He's not super young anyway. Like, when you look at this 3-year window you have with Dallas Goedert, it's just, he's going to be the number 3 option in offense that doesn't pass a ton, with a quarterback who, good passer. Jalen Hurts is a good passer, but he's not a Patrick Mahomes. He's not a Josh Allen. He is not one of those guys. Like, it's just not it. And I truly don't think, I mean, when you look at when the stats when Dallas Goedert came back from injury, those last few games, because Devontae Smith, when Dallas Goedert was gone, was going off. Devontae Smith was insane in those games. And when Dallas Goedert came back, the opportunity wasn't there for him as much, and he wasn't producing as many fantasy points as a result. So Dallas Goedert's somebody I'm going to be shying away from in dynasty drafts. I think he's a tad overvalued right now because I just don't think the upside is there. And as a result, I think he's going to be a frustrating mid-end tight end 1, and that's not someone I want in fantasy. I want to shoot for the guys with upside. I'd much rather take a dart throw on Jelani Woods or Darnell Washington than take a mid-round pick on Dallas Goedert.
All right, fair criticisms. He is one of those players that we've been talking up for a while as that next guy who's going to break out. And like you said, he has stayed in that nice mid tight end 1 area. You like to have him, but is he really worth going out there and aggressively attacking in drafts right now? I would have to kind of agree with you and say probably not. So I like that pick there. We got a comment coming in.
That's definitely an interesting point because, I mean, when you do look at it, it is interesting. Maybe they don't want Jalen Hurts running as much with the money. I I do like that point. That's a very good point. But the Eagles also, you got to think about it as well. The Eagles have a big hole at wide receiver 3 right now. Like, they just got rid of Zach Pascal. Quez Watkins has been trashed last year. Like, they have a big hole wide receiver 3. I think they're going to be filling that this year, either the draft or free agency, looking for somebody. So I think they're going to get some targets there stolen away. And I just don't think Dallas Goedert, and even this year too, when you look at it, he had a very good season, but he was still so on and off for fantasy. When you look at the numbers, like, he had some good games, some horrible games. Like, the targets just aren't always going to be there, and I think he's always just going to be put in this spot where he's a low end tight end 1, and that is someone that in fantasy is just someone you don't want. Like, at all.
He's very much, I mean, you can see by his yardage totals here too. And I'm actually going to read the question or the comment real quick for the YouTube people. He said, Bizarre Curdy said, once Hurts get the bag, though, no way Eagles want him running as much. I think there will be more targets available coming soon to that offense. Good point. He got 69 targets this last year. He had 76 the season before, 65 the season before that. But the touchdowns, you know, for a tight end to really hit his ceiling, he's already got those yards. He got a reasonable number of yards, but the touchdowns just aren't really there. I would have to almost be concerned about that. And they're so hard to predict and project. But with Jalen Hurts, with A.J. Brown, with Devontae Smith, you know,
that run
with Rashad Penny, it's hard to really think that he would even get, not even saying he got double digits, but even close to that. So like you said, it's just hard to see a path for him to find the upside. But I will say, Curdy, what you said, I think you're right there too. I don't think this team is going to use Hurts as much. There's definitely going to be enough passing volume for him to be relevant. But again, I'm kind of going to agree with Hutch here that I think that in drafts, and this is what I do, and I look for outliers. I want to get the guy that's going to go all the way. And I just don't know if Dallas Goedert is in a situation right now that's conductive for him going all the way at that tight end spot for me. So I'll hand it back off to you. Sorry.
No. I couldn't agree with more of what you just said, man. Like, I agree there. Like, when I was talking about it a second ago, like, I want tight ends to be the number 2 option in their offense or better. Dallas Goedert does not have that upside, and it's not even close. Like, he just doesn't have that upside unless an injury happens, and he doesn't have the upside for double-digit touchdowns. So you're gonna be stuck in a situation where he's gonna leave you. He's gonna ghost you some games, and it's going to suck. He's gonna be low end tight end 1. And low end tight end 1s suck. Like, they just do. After the first few guys, it just sucks to have like a tight end 8 in fantasy. You just don't want that. They average like 9 points a game in PPR, and if they score a touchdown,
it's a terrible feeling.
They're bad.
It's because you paid for it, and somebody who drafted a guy at tight end 30 got him on waivers. He's getting half a point, difference than you all season long. And it's just like so frustrating. So yeah, I 100% agree with you. The tight end position is very tedious. I try to be careful and mindful about who I attack, who I put on my team. Always thoughtful of the market and the moment. So this is a moment to get some young guys, because we have some older guys working their way out of the league. All right, well, this is about time to wrap it up. Looks like we had another comment come through. I might pull that up. Hutch, before we let you go, I want to tell you, I appreciate you coming on. Everybody make sure we linked Hutch's podcast feed in the YouTube channel. And if you're listening on the podcast feed, I'll also put a link in both of our podcast feeds into like the show notes or whatever. So y'all can go throw him a follow, listen to his podcast, show some support, show some love. I wanted to, before we jump out of here though, you said you didn't want to talk about IDP, which is totally fine. You said you don't play IDP, which is also totally fine.
I don't play IDP, so if you were to ask me like an IDP question, I'd be totally dead.
I want you. Do you have any questions for me? Do you want to call? I mean, give me if you got me right here, I would love to chat with you about any defensive player, even Eagles based. If you want to talk about anything defense, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I saw you tweeting about him.
Yeah,
I just want to maybe spend 3, 4, 5 minutes, just chat a little IDP with you, and just if you had any questions or comments about the format or anything like that, I would be more than happy to kind of close the show off with that.
Yeah, I am always I've seen all the time on Twitter, and I talk about it with people. Like, it seems like a very interesting format, but like it's just like double the knowledge that you got to know when you're playing IDP, because you got to know every defensive player like every offensive player. And for me, well, I would be thrilled to do that and try an IDP league. Like, it's just with that, the amount of content I'm doing, the amount of stuff I'm already doing, like adding IDP to that would be a lot for me to fully go in and research all these players and learn it. It would be very, very difficult for me. I've always been fascinated. That's the word.
The Eagles have you're a fan of a good team that for IDP. I mean, you guys had Hassan Reddick this last year, who I think he should have probably got a few more votes for Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, he was.
Carter Johnson tied the league for interceptions, even though he missed games.
Yep. So you guys have some IDP studs over there. Javon Hargrave, you guys lost him to the Niners.
Yep.
The Niners suck. But they got a nice defensive tackle. You guys stole him from us, from the Steelers, a couple years ago.
Yes. Yeah, we did. But Javon.
And Ndamukong Suh. You guys had Ndamukong Suh on your line.
Yes, Suh. We had him for a while, yeah. Cox was there. Graham was there. Graham had his career high in sacks this past year.
He's one of those older guys. He's always been a big pressure guy, but he finally got home for some this year. Spiffy T had a question for me. Kevin Byard's IDP value, I'd say it remains pretty high. He's not going anywhere. He's one of the better defensive backs in the league. Let me see if I had any more questions or comments here before we roll out of here, Hutch. All right, well, before we go, last thing I will give you is, what advice would you give to anybody coming into the industry, old, young, whatever it may be, that stuff aside, just as you've been somebody who's been doing this for, 2 years now, you have a lot of reps behind the mic, you have a lot of reps behind the keyboard, you have a lot of reps just watching football, and before I throw that off to you, I will say, and I'm not going to try to convince you to play IDP, but when we watch football, we're already always watching defense. That's the thing that I think we've kind of tricked ourselves into thinking we're not participating, but it's there if you look at it. So just put a little bug in your ear. But what's one piece of knowledge or wisdom that you would like hand off to somebody that came into your DMs like, hey Hutch, I love your podcast, I love what you do. I love that you are attacking this in earnest. What's a piece of advice you would give me, somebody else who wants to do that?
Yeah, I've actually had like a few of those DMs. Actually, I actually got in contact with a couple like other kids my age who were also trying to get into the fantasy industry, make fantasy content. And I've been like, teaching them a little bit about it. It was really fun to do that. I was able to do it twice with a couple guys. It was really, really awesome. But the advice I would give, I don't know if I stress this enough to them, but the advice that I really, really thought about was treat every opportunity like it's your last. Like every opportunity you get to have a podcast, every opportunity you get to be guest on a podcast, to interact with somebody, like leave it all out on the table. Leave it all out on the table. What do you got to lose? Like I feel like putting your all into every piece, like I hear people say like filler episodes and like things like that. I don't like, that's not a word I use in my head. Like that's not a thing I do in my head. Like I treat every opportunity like it's my last one to write something. Like every article I write, I treat like it's my last opportunity to write. Every video I make, I treat like it's my last video I'm making. Like
that's awesome.
I treat like I'm trying to be the best. I'm trying to make it the best one. And I truly approach that with like every piece of content I've ever done. And if I'm not approaching it that way, I need to take a break. That's what I've thought about it. If I'm not approaching it that way, then I might need to take a little break, and that's okay. That's okay. Sometimes you need a break every once in a while. I've definitely taken a couple breaks throughout this journey. I've definitely had a few breaks. I've just, I need a little bit of break. That's okay. But treat every opportunity like it's your last, because it might be. Honestly, like if you like, just go all out, man. Go all out for it. Go for it.
I love that, bro. You're wise beyond your years for sure. And you're right. You came correct. You were definitely prepared for the show. You had awesome takes. Even the way you're able to deliver. Like I'm like taking some notes. Because we can learn from anybody and everybody. That's one thing that I'm like a huge fan of. Sorry it took so long to get you on the show, dude, because you spit fire. So we're definitely going to have you back on this off season another time. And we do a live stream in season 2, which I'm sure we're all busy and stuff, but we do a start sit season 2, which is a lot of fun. That's what I really love. And I love getting my hands dirty and just like talking through people like, okay, what are we doing? So we'll try to slide you on for that too, maybe.
I love that.
But any final parting thoughts for the folks over here? Any any final secret nuggets or any cool content you got coming out, or just want to say what's up?
No, I mean, you guys can follow me on Twitter. I'm at HutchinsonB_FF on Twitter. And you can find pretty much all my content from there. I write for DLF, otherwise known as Dynasty League Football. I make videos for the football guys and their YouTube channel, Hutchinson Brown's Fantasy Football Perspectives, my podcast. Check it out. I'm also working on a Patreon. I have a Patreon I'm working on. Maybe some Dynasty rankings, maybe bonus podcast episodes, giveaways, all kinds of awesome stuff will be included in that. So I'm hoping to release that shortly after the draft. I don't have an official date yet, but it's definitely something I'm really working on and I'm really excited for. So awesome, yeah, dude. That's the biggest thing I'm working on right now.
Excellent. Well, we were happy to have you. Y'all, IDP Army, everybody watching us, you know what to do. Go show my man Hutchinson some love. We will be back later this week with more NFL content, more best ball content, more Dynasty content, all fantasy football all the time. You know what it is. And yeah, make sure you subscribe to the channel and subscribe to both of our podcast feeds.